Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. In this video, we're diving into I Raised the Beast Well, a true Cinderella story with a twist. Meet Blondina, a girl whose life takes an unexpected turn when her father, the emperor, suddenly takes her in, placing her in the palace with her cruel, legitimate siblings. How will she adjust to this new life? Stick around to find out, and don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us bring you more amazing content. Ready? Let's go. Blondina is a young girl with blonde hair and gray eyes, orphaned after her mother's passing. She works at an inn under the rule of a cruel owner who beats her whenever he pleases. One day, he threatens to sell her to a local baron, infamous for torturing and killing young girls, all to pay off his gambling debts. Terrified, Blondina flees into the streets. She refuses to die like that, clutching a precious ring her mother left her, a keepsake said to be a gift from her father. But desperation takes over. She needs money to escape her miserable life, so she heads to a pawn shop. At first, the owner refuses to deal with her, but when he sees the ring, his demeanor changes. He accuses her of theft and calls the guards, who take her away. To her surprise, she is brought to a luxurious palace. Sitting in fear, she soon meets a powerful man, the emperor himself. He asks about her mother, then makes a shocking revelation. He is her father. A few days later, Blondina begins learning the strict rules of imperial etiquette. One morning, she is summoned to a tea party with the emperor, where he introduces her to her half-siblings, Lart and Adelaide. He also coldly reminds her of the fabricated story they created to explain her sudden appearance, claiming she had been frail and recovering in another kingdom all this time. After the tea party, Lart corners her in the corridor, spewing insults. But instead of cowering, Blondina confidently fires back, humiliating him. Furious, Lart grows aggressive, but Adelaide steps in to stop the scene. She looks down on Blondina with contempt, but Blondina simply smiles and walks away, uninterested in their petty games. On her way back to her room, she hears a soft meowing. Curious, she follows the sound and finds a small black kitten. But to her shock, the little creature suddenly speaks in a human voice. "I'm not a cat." Blondina isn't fazed. Instead, she notices the kitten's injured leg and quickly connects it to a broken branch nearby. As she observes, she also spots two more mysterious cats lurking in the shadows. Blondina scolds the cats for bullying their injured friend, and they flee. The small black kitten, still defiant, initially refuses her help. However, when she gently offers to take him to the palace, admitting that he might be her first and only friend, he hesitates. If anyone understands what it's like to be rejected, it's him. Finally, he jumps into her arms, accepting her offer. As they head toward her room, they encounter a palace servant. Blondina freezes in fear, unconsciously tightening her grip on the kitten. Sensing her unease, the little cat's presence intensifies, making the servant immediately bow. Blondina is stunned by the unexpected display of submission. Then, to her utter shock, the kitten leaps from her arms and transforms into a dark-skinned, handsome young boy with piercing purple eyes. The servant, visibly trembling, recognizes him instantly. The black leopard, the cruelest of them all. Not wanting to linger, the boy impatiently asks the purpose of this encounter. The servant hands Blondina a royal bracelet, a gift from the emperor, before hurriedly leaving. Blondina stares at the mysterious boy, but instead of being impressed by his presence, she remains clueless. This frustrates him. How could she not recognize his greatness? With a huff, he shifts back into a cat, allowing her to carry him once more. Once they arrive in her room, he finally reveals his name, Amun. By the time Blondina finishes tending to his injured leg, night has fallen. Rather than leave, Amun casually decides to stay, curling up beside her in bed. He explains that his kind, divine leopards, usually despise humans, seeing them as nothing more than foolish traitors. But Blondina, she is different. As they talk, he warns her never to touch the mysterious stone embedded in his forehead. From that day on, Amun finds every excuse imaginable to visit the lonely princess. Elsewhere in the palace, the emperor is growing desperate. He is searching for someone with blonde hair, golden eyes, with the power to command the divine leopards. Blondina, despite her blonde hair, has gray eyes. He recalls her mother, a woman who perfectly matched these features, yet possessed no power. Despite this, the emperor had fallen deeply in love with her. To protect her and their child, he chose the throne over them, believing that obtaining power was the only way to keep them safe. But as time passed, his love for her faded. A few days later, Blondina and her lady-in-waiting, Lucy, chat about how long it's been since they last saw Amon. Just then, the cat suddenly appears out of nowhere, carrying a bleeding sparrow in his mouth. Lucy, horrified, rushes out of the room, unable to bear the sight of the injured bird. Blondina sighs and tries to explain to Amon that humans usually find sparrows cute only when they're alive. Unbothered, Amon glances at the motionless bird and casually commands the bird to get up, or he will make his death a reality. To Blondina's amazement, the sparrow suddenly revives. The tiny bird flutters up, turns to the princess, and begins to speak, explaining to the princess that he stayed still because of Almond's sharp teeth. Blondina asks how he can talk. The bird explains that it's because Amon shared some of his power. Since the sparrow has no name, Blondina decides to call him Magetto, to his absolute delight. Later, Amon expresses interest in watching an archery contest to analyze human weapons. However, he needs to stay anonymous. Blondina playfully tries to put a beanie on his head to cover his transformation stone, but he refuses. Though he could go in his human form, he prefers his leopard form to avoid any complications. At the contest, the Emperor arrives with Lart and Adelaide, completely ignoring Blondina. He then announces the beginning of the hunt. After a while, Amon grows bored, so Blondina suggests they explore the trees instead. As she admires the scenery, an arrow suddenly whistles past her ear. She freezes in terror, while Amon, enraged, turns toward the shooter. Lart arrogantly approaches, mocking them. But Amon has had enough. He lunges at Lart, transforming midair, and pins him to the ground beneath his powerful claws. Lart struggles, but Amon only presses harder, his weight crushing the prince's chest and neck. Lart gasps, begging for mercy. But Amon doesn't budge. Blondina steps in. She acknowledges that Lart deserves punishment, but death is too much. After one last warning, Amon releases the trembling prince and turns back to Blondina, asking if they should head back to the palace. Furious and humiliated, Lart later complains to Adelaide, but instead of siding with him, she scolds him for his recklessness, pointing out how his actions could have damaged their reputation. Still, she reassures him with a smirk. She will personally avenge him. Determined, Adelaide marches to the Emperor's office. She expresses frustration over how the divine leopards roam freely, making the imperial family seem weak. The Emperor listens, then considers her as a potential heir. He tells her about the legend of the golden-eyed blondes, descendants of Barahan, heir of the first god, and the only ones capable of defeating the divine leopards. He then encourages Adelaide to find them and bring them to the palace, so she can one day become empress. Meanwhile, in Blondina's room, Amon plays with a ball of yarn, while Magetto playfully pesters him. Jokingly, Amon threatens to eat either Blondina or Lucy in reprisals for their lack of consideration. Blondina laughs but protests, saying she probably wouldn't taste good since she grew up eating nothing but junk. Amon inquires about what happened and if it's related to her fear of big, bulky men. Blondina hesitates. She isn't ready to talk about it yet. Later, Blondina prepares to attend a grand palace ball hosted by the Emperor. She arrives alone and immediately becomes the target of whispers and rumors. People gossip about her dress, her lack of friends, and her strange presence. The Emperor notices and encourages Lart and Adelaide to include their sister. Reluctantly, they comply, but when they join their friends, they deliberately switch to a language Blondina doesn't understand, just to mock her. Adelaide then condescendingly offers to let Blondina join the conversation. Blondina, unimpressed, fires back sassily, saying that even if she had something to brag about, she wouldn't stoop to their level. Instead, she turns and leaves, preferring fresh air over their shallow games. While Adelaide wonders how she could have understood the conversation, Philip, a young Marquess, seems really interested in Blondina. Sitting alone on a bench, Blondina reflects that she doesn't need to understand their words to know exactly what they were saying. As she bites into a piece of pie, she exclaims loudly about how delicious it is. Suddenly, a wild Amon appears, stealing the pie right out of her hands. Blondina laughs and hugs him tightly, feeling infinitely happier in his company than with the other humans. The next day, Blondina learns how to play chess with Lucy. Their lesson is interrupted when a servant announces an unexpected visitor, Marquess Philip. Philip arrives at Blondina's room, looking somewhat defiant. She isn't entirely sure why he's here until he presents her with gifts, tea flowers, and a brooch. He explains that his family offered one to each princess of the empire, so Adelaide received one as well. He then extends an invitation to his upcoming birthday party. However, this entire interaction infuriates Amon. The jealous leopard immediately tries to break the gifts, shattering the tea flower pot, and even lunges at Philip's leg, attempting to bite him. Philip leaves. Meanwhile, Amon demands to know why this human is acting so familiar with her. Blondina, flustered, tries to come up with an explanation but is just as confused as Amon. In the end, she calms him down by hugging him, making his tail flick in irritation. Still sulking, Amon asks if she is really planning to go to this human's party. Blondina sighs. She admits she can't avoid social gatherings forever, but at the same time, she's sick of being ridiculed for her lack of imperial knowledge. Seeing her frustration, Amon unexpectedly offers to teach her Old Etesian, the language Adalai and Lart used to mock her. Blondina is intrigued but also skeptical about how he plans to write and teach her with those paws. Amon then transforms into his human form. Blondina freezes, her face turning red. Sensing her flustered reaction, Amon plays along, enjoying her discomfort, as he effortlessly writes Old Artesian characters for her to learn. Blondina, still trying to recover, shyly admits that she's illiterate. It's not an immediate problem, but she knows it will be in the long run. Without hesitation, Amon turns to Lucy and asks her if she can teach Blondina how to read Standard Etesian. A few days later, Blondina sits by a fountain in the palace gardens, studying a note Amon wrote. She stares at the words, struggling to read them, when suddenly, the Emperor appears. He casually reads the note over her shoulder before sitting beside her, and asks her if she is adjusting well to the palace. He then comments on how much she resembles her mother, speculating about her life after he left. Blondina corrects him. Her mom never loved anyone else but him, despite her knowing that he would leave them to fulfill his duty. Back in her room, Lucy informs Blondina that Philip has sent another invitation. His birthday party is planned the same day, and Blondina, feeling more confident in Old Artesian, finally decides to attend. However, when Amon offers to accompany her in human form, she refuses. This triggers him. Blondina quickly reassures him that her decision has nothing to do with him being a beast. He calms down, so to distract him, Lucy dangles a ball of yarn. Amon falls for it. At the party, Blondina greets Philip, but immediately notices Adalai and Lart nearby. They eye the brooch pinned to her dress, the exact same one Adalai is wearing. Adalai's expression darkens. She glares at Philip and in Old Artesian, commands him to never invite her again if she is to attend. Then, with a venomous smile, she insults Blondina, backed up by Lart. But Blondina isn't having it. She responds in perfect Old Etesian, humiliating Adalai in front of everyone. Lart gapes in shock and asks how she learned it, to which she reminds him that she is an imperial princess too. Adelaide, furious and humiliated, storms out of the party, Lart following behind. Unfortunately for her, her carriage breaks down. Furious, she screams at Lart, who awkwardly tries to comfort her. Inside, Blondina apologizes to Philip for the commotion. She calmly explains that she is used to their nasty behavior, and she has no interest in challenging Adelaide's position in society. She only wishes to live humbly and peacefully. But Adalai refuses to understand. To prevent further trouble, Blondina politely asks Philip not to invite her again. Philip watches her, feeling his heart suddenly race. Back in her room, Blondina asks Lucy and Magetto about the history between humans and divine leopards. At first, both are dumbfounded by her ignorance, since it's common knowledge. But eventually, they begin to explain. Blondina listens intently as Lucy and Magetto explain the long history between humans and divine leopards. For centuries, the two sides fought meaningless battles until they finally agreed on a fragile truce. However, 500 years ago, a descendant of Baharan appeared, a human with the terrifying ability to control all divine leopards. Under his command, the leopards were nearly exterminated. It wasn't until a black leopard rose up and killed Baharan's descendant that the bloodshed ended. In the aftermath, both sides, shaken by their losses, forged another peace treaty. As Blondina processes this dark past, a servant enters the room, holding a stunning bracelet. It's a gift. The letter attached is from Marcus Philip. Later that day, Philip departs to another country to study. Seated in his carriage, his mind drifts back to the princess drooling. He remembers how direct and confident she is despite her origin. He plans to come back to her after his studies to marry her, trusting the fact that he is the best catch for her, since nobody would want a princess with such a debatable background. That evening, Blondina is trying on the bracelet. Just then, Amon appears. His jealousy shows the moment he sees the bracelet on her wrist. He asks her who sent it. Blondina barely has time to answer before he snatches it off her wrist and storms out. For an entire week, Amon doesn't visit. Blondina tries to push away the unease growing in her chest, but at night, she is haunted by nightmares, visions of strange people and war. She's woken up by Amon, who pokes her face with his paws. Relief washes over her. He places a ring in her palm. She examines it, her heart fluttering. It's beautiful, except it's a little loose. She decides to wear it as a necklace. This makes her think about her father, who has been paying more attention to her. Amon gets her out of her thoughts by demanding that she doesn't see the other guy, Philip, anymore. since he can buy presents too and will protect her no matter what. Blondina is confused, but reassures him by saying that the Marquess won't be visiting anymore since he left for another country, and that she will always choose her favorite cat. Amon is very satisfied by her answer. Just then, Lucy enters the room, carrying a bundle of branches in her hands. She explains that these are special plants that cats love. Amon immediately grabs one and starts playing with it. Blondina watches him with amusement, then playfully asks him if he would choose her or the branch. Amon seems offended. Then, in one swift movement, he transforms into his human form, rests his head on her knees, and murmurs, "Of course, it's you, Britty." Sometime later, the entire imperial family gathers to welcome representatives from another kingdom for a new trade agreement. During the event, a snake suddenly slithers toward Adelaide. She screams in terror, but when the same snake moves toward Blondina, she doesn't even flinch. She is complimented by the emperor for her royal behavior. This angers Adelaide, who seeks for her father's approval as well. Later, Blondina reflects on the encounter. No matter how much the emperor acknowledges her, she still doesn't feel like she belongs. Amon appears. Her mood instantly brightens as she pulls him into a tight embrace. A noble from the visiting kingdom approaches, striking up a conversation about the palace gardens. At one point, he reaches out a hand toward her. Blondina tenses, but then, a small black snake emerges from his sleeve, curling affectionately around her. The noble smiles warmly. He explains how glad he is to be able to exchange with a pet lover. Before she can respond, Amon's jealousy shows up again and he tries to beat the poor snake. On another day, still in the palace gardens, Lart rides by on horseback. He spots Blondina and Lucy standing together. For some reason, his gaze lingers not on Blondina, but on Lucy. Lart is scolded by the Empress for his behavior at a tea party. Earlier, two of the invitees basically made an indirect attack on Lart for not mastering the basics of Etesian skill, so Lart threw some tea at them. After being scolded, he wanders into the garden, still angry at how he's been treated by high society. There, he overhears Lucy arguing with a servant. The servant insists that working under Blondina is pointless, that she has no power, no authority, and will never amount to anything. But Lucy refuses to leave. Lart watches in silence. He cannot help but relate to his own situation. People will always try to reach out for their own benefit and stab you in the back once they consider you worthless. But he doesn't understand why Lucy stays loyal to Blondina. That evening, during an imperial dinner, he finds himself stealing glances at Lucy. Later that night, he still can't stop thinking about her. This desperates him since he needs to be with someone with enough power to secure his access to the throne. He cannot afford to fall for the daughter of a declining noble family. In the garden, Lucy and Blondina chat about an upcoming horseback riding competition. Blondina admits she has never ridden a horse before. Determined, Lucy takes her to a training area where riders practice. Not far away, Lart notices them. His eyes land on Lucy, and to his horror, he blushes. Amon is not impressed and makes some moves to get some compliment, confusing Blondina about his intentions. She wonders if he's only trying to impress Lucy, but the moment is interrupted by a loud scream. Lart has fallen off his horse, spraining his ankle. Feeling utterly pathetic, the ladies rush to help him. He tries to stand proudly but falls again. He is caught by Lucy, who then asks him to sit so she can perform first aid on his ankle. Lart looks incredibly embarrassed and shy during the whole process. He yells at her to leave him alone, but she doesn't listen and helps him walk. Later that night, Lart reflects on the incident. He recalls his father's teachings. A good emperor doesn't fall in love, but he can't control his feelings. Fast forward to a few years later, Lucy and Blondina have grown up into stunning young women, while Amon remains the same cute cat in his familiar form. Blondina can't help but wonder if Amon ever ages at all. When she tries to play with him, he races away to chase Magetto instead. She notices a troubling shift. For some time now, Amon has barely let her touch him, almost as if he likes someone else. One morning, before the sun rises, Lucy enters Blondina's room to wake her up, but as she approaches, she freezes. She notices an intruder by her side. The man turns to face her. She recognizes the gemstone on his forehead. It's Amon, in his human form. He's a grown man and hot as hell. A few days later, Amon lays in the grass in his cat form. He's soon joined by Great Elder Aisha of the Divine Leopard clan, who comes to discuss his coming-of-age ritual and the decision about who will act as his observer. Amon explains that, as the firstborn of the leader of the Divine Leopards, he wishes to choose the Emperor's firstborn, Blondina, for the role, not only because he likes her, but also as a reminder to humans of who is truly in charge. Elder Aisha makes a comment about the ceremonial duel that will decide the new leader. She warns him to be careful, urging him not to kill his opponent, as the previous black leopard had done. Amon almost feels insulted by this statement. He assures her that he will never be like them. At the imperial palace, the emperor and empress sit together, discussing the leopard clan's invitation to the upcoming ceremony. The empress makes a joking comment about not having to worry about her own children attending, but her words are met with a death glare from her husband, as Blondina is also his child and needs to be considered as such. Blondina enters the room just in time to hear the conversation and is informed of the invitation. Without hesitation, she accepts the invitation to attend the ceremony, despite the risks it may entail, and leaves. Meanwhile, Adela is also informed of the invitation. She doesn't take it well at all. Still convinced that Blondina is trying to upstage her, she demands that her servant keep a close watch on Blondina's every move and to report anything suspicious, since she wants to teach her a lesson. Back in Blondina's room, she and Amon are sealing letters to be sent to Lucy. She asks him why he didn't tell her before about the ceremony and if there is anything she needs to prepare or do in order to not make any mistakes. Amon, proudly reassuring her that he'll manage everything. The way he speaks reminds her of what commoners say during a marriage proposal. The mention of marriage, however, triggers a sudden embarrassment in Amon. She explains it is because Lucy and her have reached a marriageable age, and this information seems to interest Amon. Blondina is irritated at his reaction, convinced that the situation excites him only because of Lucy. Meanwhile, Amon is talking to himself about a possible marriage with Blondina. She tries to steer the conversation back to the ritual, asking him when it will take place. He tells her that it will be in 3 days. The day of the ritual arrives. As Blondina prepares to leave, the emperor comes to see her off, wishing her a safe journey. His behavior confuses her, leaving her wondering during the whole carriage ride. When Blondina finally reaches the forest, she's welcomed by 2 young leopards, both of whom will also participate in the ritual. Their cheerfulness makes Blondina smile. That night, the ceremony begins. The 3 candidates face their observers, and Blondina is utterly mesmerized by the sheer magnitude of the ritual. Fear creeps into her, as she realizes she's the only human among these powerful beings. The elder announces the end of the ceremony, and Amon approaches her. When Blondina falls to her knees, it hits her. Amon is truly a member of the Divine Leopard clan. In that moment, she feels so insignificant in comparison to the power and grandeur of his world. But when Amon gets her out of her mind, she hugs him tightly in front of the entire clan. Later, Amon leads her to his home, where she's shocked to discover that he not only has a house, but lives alone. No parents, no relatives. The weight of it all settles in her chest. At Amon's house, he offers her the chance to wash up. As she removes her cape, Amon becomes flustered, thinking she might strip in front of him. Blondina teases him about his nervousness, laughing at how much he's changed since his younger days. She suddenly realizes that she hasn't seen him in his human form for years. Still, a thought crosses her mind. She feels confident that she wouldn't be fazed if he stripped in front of her now. She leaves for the bathroom, leaving Amon flustered and blushing. That night, as they lie in bed together, neither of them can sleep. Amon is still thinking about the moment when Blondina fell to her knees during the ceremony, her fear evident. He gently asks her about it, asking who traumatized her in the past. Blondina hesitates at first, but then she opens up, telling him about a time she worked at an inn to survive because she was poor. The innkeeper would beat her for any reason, and this abuse left her with a deep fear of men. As she speaks, tears fill her eyes. Amon stares at her, his eyes filled with concern. He tells her that she needs to go back to the inn and face the man who caused her such pain, to realize just how weak and powerless he is. Blondina cries softly, but Amon tenderly licks her face, wiping away her tears. He promises that once she faces her fear, he will show her his human form again, something she's been wanting for so long. The next day, as they ride back to her hometown, they unfortunately encounter some bandits eager to steal from, or something worse. Amon orders Blondina to dismount from her horse named Daisy, and with a swift movement, he unleashes Daisy against the men. The bandits are sent crashing to the ground, all injured by the horse's power. One of the bandits, however, tries to rise, and Blondina notices something strange: his golden eyes. It's the same golden eyes her mother had. They continue their ride to the inn where Blondina grew up. The closer they get, the more anxious she gets. The cat notices the tension and hugs her to cheer her up. He is with her, so everything is going to be just right. Blondina notices a young man she once knew. He doesn't recognize her, but he's kind enough to lead them to the inn. Blondina nervously enters the inn, hoping to face her past with strength, but the situation quickly escalates. Neither the innkeeper nor his wife recognize her at first, and they treat her warmly, offering to show her their best rooms. However, as they talk and the woman turns to speak with Blondina, she suddenly recognizes the little girl she once exploited. The warmth in their demeanor evaporates, and the innkeeper begins to make assumptions about her life, treating her like trash as he tries to grab her hand. Blondina's response is swift. She rejects his hand and slaps him hard across the face. Furious, the innkeeper raises his fist to strike her, but she stops him cold, threatening him with heavy consequences. Her imperial presence and commanding attitude leave the man shaken. In the end, she forces him to apologize, and he reluctantly leads her to her room. Once safely behind the door, Blondina collapses to the floor, overwhelmed by the emotional toll of confronting her past. Amon, who has been watching silently, congratulates her, but also contemplates taking the innkeeper's life for his transgressions. During her stay at the inn, Blondina takes full advantage of the opportunity to assert her power. She orders the couple to work tirelessly to please her. One evening, as she dines, she announces that she has a present for them in memory of their past dealings. With a smile, she hands over the deed to the inn, making her the new owner. She orders them to pack their things and leave by the morning. The man begs for mercy, claiming they have nowhere else to go. These words remind Blondina of her own situation, how vulnerable she was when they took advantage of her as a child. Despite the plea, she has no sympathy for them and decides to show no mercy. Later that night, the innkeeper, in a fit of desperation, heads to Blondina's room with a knife in hand, intending to torture and kill her. He has no idea that someone more dangerous is watching his every move. Amon glances at him in the dark and grins as the man shivers in fear. The next morning, Amon wakes Blondina for breakfast. As they make their way to the common area, they discover the innkeeper has been attacked and is injured from the night before. The innkeeper's wife falls to her knees, begging Blondina not to kick them out after what happened. She calls Blondina ungrateful, but the princess is unmoved. She reminds them of the abuse they subjected her to, and tells them that they are lucky she doesn't seek revenge, or they would both be dead by now. Blondina leaves the inn with Amon, finally feeling at peace. She has closed that painful chapter of her life. Meanwhile, back at the imperial palace, Lart asks Blondina with enthusiasm about her experience at the ritual and how large the divine beasts really are. He seems perplexed as to why she was the one invited to the ritual, considering he is the apparent heir to the throne. But Blondina's answer makes him realize just how dangerous Adeli and his position to the throne are. The emperor enters the room, noticing how Blondina has matured. He looks at her closely and asks if she was treated well during her time in the forest. She answers positively, and the emperor pats her head, recognizing how much she now resembles her mother. From a distance, Adeli watches the scene with a growing sense of jealousy, unable to hide her frustration at the attention Blondina is receiving from their father. Her jealousy turns into resentment as she acknowledges that she was the one who hired the bandits who attacked her sister in the forest. Her irritation grows, realizing that they didn't do their job properly. It has been a few weeks now that Amon left to attend the final battle to determine who will become the new leader of the divine beasts. He told Blondina that he would be gone for a month, and though he isn't concerned about the outcome, she can't help but worry for his safety. She fears he might get hurt. The following day, Blondina suggests to Lucy that they go to the forest of the divine beasts to pick mushrooms and taste some fresh raspberries. As they prepare to leave, Lart, who is passing by, offers to escort them. As the three of them make their way through the forest, Blondina crouches down with Lucy to observe the mushrooms. Lart, on the other hand, remains unimpressed and takes the opportunity to make derogatory comments about Blondina's commoner background. However, to his surprise, Lucy defends her. Blondina tells Lart that he may join them only if he apologizes, and much to her surprise, Lart does so sincerely. His willingness to change his behavior for Lucy reveals how deeply he cares for her, and Blondina begins to view him in a slightly different light. As they continue their journey, Lart begins to worry, and despite Blondina's confident demeanor, she too starts to feel uneasy. She suggests returning to the palace, but unfortunately, they end up getting lost. The situation grows more dangerous when Lart senses an incoming threat, drawing his sword and pulling the two ladies into his protective embrace. In the chaos, the siblings begin to argue, each blaming the other for their current predicament. Lart for agreeing to the walk into the forest, and Blondina for suggesting it in the first place. As she watches Lart's protective behavior, Blondina realizes that this is the first time she truly feels like he is her brother. Her thoughts are interrupted when a wild, aggressive bear emerges from the bushes. Without hesitation, Blondina orders Lart and Lucy to run to the left, while she lures the bear away in the opposite direction. Lart protests, but it's too late. Blondina starts running, calling out for Amon. Fear grips her as she stumbles and falls, but despite the danger, she is happy knowing that Lart and Lucy have likely escaped. As the bear approaches, Blondina thinks about her little cat and braces herself for the worst. A loud scratching sound rings out, and Blondina opens her eyes to see Amon in his adult leopard form, towering over the beast. Despite the imminent danger, Blondina stops Amon from killing the bear, taking responsibility for provoking the attack. She suddenly recalls Lucy's safety, and Amon's anger flares up as he scolds her for being in the forest where the magic is unstable. The group quickly reunites, and Lart, seeing Amon for the first time, is shocked. Lucy recognizes Amon and is reassured by his presence, though this sparks a moment of jealousy in Blondina's heart. Amon escorts them back to the palace, and the ladies thank him for his help. However, before parting ways, Amon tells Blondina that he will sleep with her tonight. Sensing her confusion, he asks if she is afraid of him. His words take Blondina off guard, and he insists that she must never be afraid, as she belongs to him. That night, as Blondina sits in bed with Amon beside her on the floor, she can't help but feel uneasy. She finally asks him if he likes Lucy, and without hesitation, Almond confirms that he does. This revelation upsets Blondina, as she realizes, for the first time in years, that she has feelings for him. The next day, Lart is reprimanded by the Emperor at a family tea party for his reckless behavior in the forest. Lart had already told Blondina the day before that he would take all the blame upon himself, acknowledging that she had risked her life to save them. The Emperor then asks about the beast who escorted them back, and Blondina explains that she befriended one of them at the coming-of-age ceremony. The Emperor begins to consider a new plan to improve the relationship with the Divine Leopard clan, an official invitation to the palace. Lart, who knows the truth about Amon, teases Blondina and inquires about Lucy. Their conversation clearly upsets Adele. Lart, meanwhile, mentions Marquess Philip Rodson, who left the Empire years ago, piquing Blondina's curiosity. Later in her room, Magetto pleads with Blondina not to scare him like she did when she got lost in the forest. She promises she won't, and then turns to Lucy, asking who she likes the most between Amon and Lart, and who she would choose if one of them were to confess to her. Lucy answers honestly, saying that she likes Amon, but for the second question, she would choose Lart. In the palace dungeons, Adele meets the bandit that she hired to attract Blondina. There, she finds a blonde-haired man with golden eyes, sparking a sense of intrigue. Could he be the descendant of Barahan? Back in Blondina's room, Magetto is utterly confused by Lucy's choices. How could she choose to marry Lart if she still seems to have feelings for Amon? Lucy tries to explain that while she does have feelings for Amon, she doesn't love him, and the fact that Amon is a beast and she is human only further complicates matters. Later that night, Blondina reflects on the entire situation. As if on cue, Amon appears behind her, instantly brightening her mood. She hugs him tightly, but he pulls away, far more aware of their current status as adults than she is. She asks him if he got hurt during the ritual battles, and if saving her the day before had any effect on his performance. Amon calmly announces that he is now the leader of the Divine Leopards, which means no one can dictate his actions anymore. Meanwhile, in town, Philip Rodson, recently back from his studies abroad, is only focused on meeting Blondina again. A few days later, Lart enters Blondina's room and requests her to give Lucy some free time so he can take her to the opera. Blondina agrees, but as the prince offers this invitation, she looks on with a bit of jealousy, thinking about Amon. She voices out loud how beasts and humans are not meant to be together due to their racial differences. This triggers Amon, who is standing right behind her. Angrily, he declares that the difference between their races doesn't matter to him, and that he didn't work as hard as he did just to be rejected. Blondina calms him down, and as they hug, Amon asks if she is still afraid of his appearance. She admits that she was initially concerned, but now she is no longer afraid. She even goes on to say that she can never be afraid of him, making Amon blush. Feeling flustered, he runs away, accidentally breaking the door. 2 weeks later, Blondina is playing chess with Magetto, though she is distracted, her mind preoccupied with Amon, who has been absent since he left in such a rush. Philip Rodson finally arrives at the palace and presents her with a red rose bouquet, kneeling in greeting. He proposes they go for a walk to catch up, but Blondina hesitates. She is concerned about Magetto being around and not being able to keep his mouth shut, so she dismisses him. Philip, surprised by the rejection, leaves reluctantly. reluctantly. Blondina, looking at the bouquet, isn't fooled by the Marquess's intentions. She has other plans. She wants to ally the divine beasts with humans. But before she can think further, Amon shows up, clearly jealous as he notices the bouquet. He immediately breaks the vase in a fit of rage, demanding that Blondina never allow any random person into her room again. He possessively declares that she is his, and her room is his territory, warning that he will rip apart any intruder who dares to approach her. He calms down and lays beside her, his head on her knees. When she asks him why he doesn't turn to his human form anymore, he replies by changing form, taking her in his arms and overwhelming her with his inhuman beauty. Although she feels a strong pull toward him, she's still somewhat dense about his intentions, chalking his affectionate behavior up to his usual actions as a beast. Despite her confusion, she can't deny the warmth and comfort his presence brings her. When Amon admits that he had previously refrained from showing his human form because he feared she might be scared, Blondina finally understands the depth of his feelings. He kisses her hands, arms, and cheeks, but when she shyly requests a break from the constant kissing, he smirks and asks if he can sleep beside her that night, since he's now in his human form. She hesitantly agrees, which causes Amon to soften. With her innocence shining through, he decides to let her off the hook for now, choosing not to press her further. Meanwhile, in the palace, Adelaide meets with the Emperor in his office, expressing how much she misses seeing him. He suggests they go on a trip together after the upcoming inaugural ceremony he's organizing for the divine beasts. She not so innocently asks why he stopped looking for the descendant of Barahan, and promises to continue her search for the person who might hold the key to the future. This reminds the Emperor that it was he who had asked her to find this person years ago, and he considers it a backup plan if Blondina fails in her attempts to befriend the divine beasts. The Emperor gives Adelaide a key as she promises to fulfill her duty. Lart is announced and she leaves. The prince inquires about Blondina's mother. The Emperor, however, is not fooled by Lart's interest in her, and knows that his true focus is on Lucy. He advises Lart to work hard to become an emperor who commands such respect that no one would ever question his decisions or try to take what belongs to him. The next day, during the hunting tournament in the divine beasts forest, the Emperor announces the beginning of the event. Blondina, clearly bored, reflects on how Adelaide will once again be the center of attention with all the game's offerings. However, Blondina's attention shifts when she notices Philip Rodson on his horse. The ladies are waiting for the hunters to come back with their games. As they are chatting, one of them mentions a large black leopard that has been spotted around the palace recently, which immediately triggers Blondina's thoughts. Of course, they are talking about Amon, since he's not a kitten anymore. It has become harder to hide when he sneaks into the palace. Lart returns first from the hunting tournament, proudly presenting a fox to Lucy, much to everyone's shock. Though Adelaide is quick to lecture him on his poor choice of recipient, it's not truly about the game. It's the fact that Lucy is so close to Blondina that upsets her. Lart, however, is more focused on his ambition to grow more powerful and brushes off Adelaide's remarks. As the other ladies receive their game, Blondina is, as she expected, left out, with no one choosing to honor her. That is until Philip Rodson steps forward, giving her a bear as his offering. As the Emperor is about to announce Philip as the great winner, Amon appears in his beast form and goes directly to Blondina, bypassing everyone else. He places his head in her lap and declares himself the game she hunted, fulfilling the dream he'd had since she had once told him she wasn't worthy of a game offering. The room is stunned, but Blondina is pleased, while the Emperor beams with pride. He immediately announces her victory. Everyone congratulates the princess, while Philip is humiliated, his anger directed towards the beast. Adelaide shows up to tease him about marrying her. After the tournament, Blondina and Amon act lovey-dovey toward each other, leading Lart to ask Lucy if the two are dating. Lucy, unsure but thinks it's a possibility. Lart reflects on his own relationships, especially with his sister and her beast, and realizes that this connection between Blondina and Amon could be useful for his own ascension to the throne. Meanwhile, Adelaide's jealousy toward her sister continues to fester, and she begins to put together a plan to destroy both Blondina and her beast. A few days later, Blondina is in her room, discussing the family trip with Lucy and Magetto, when she asks if anyone has seen Amon recently. Magetto replies that he might be up at the springs, so Blondina decides to go look for him in the forest. There, she meets Shanti, one of the leopards Amon fought during the coming-of-age ceremony. Shanti tells her that it is too dangerous for Blondina to meet Amon at the moment, as he is out of control. Shanti agrees to let her ride him in search of Amon. As they ride, Shanti is pretty excited since this is his first interaction with a human. He keeps asking questions to the princess, especially about her relationship with Amon. When they arrive, Blondina introduces herself, using her nickname for the first time, and tells Shanti to call her that. However, Amon shows up and immediately disagrees disagrees with her decision, forcing Shanti to leave. Blondina then asks Amon if her presence is a nuisance to him, to which he responds by transforming into his human form. He inquires about the possibility of finally marking her as his, something that would prove to the world their bond. Amon gets closer and closer to Blondina until he finally kisses her, laying her down on the ground and not pulling away from her lips. Despite his desire to keep control, he admits that he's on the brink of losing it. Though he doesn't want to hurt her, his desire overwhelms him, and he ends up holding her tightly, struggling with his emotions. Later that night, Blondina reflects on what happened. She's confused, especially because she'd always been so sure that Amon had feelings for Lucy. The situation feels almost unreal to her. She dreams of walking in the forest again, meeting a beast that looks like Amon. She gives him the ability to talk, thanks to her magic, and when she tells him her name, Lucy wakes her up, concerned about her pale complexion. Lucy seems to have noticed something is off, especially with Blondina's odd behavior. She knows that something might have happened between Blondina and Amon. She encourages her to say more, but Lart interrupts the conversation to talk about his steed being ready for mating, which makes Blondina realize that what she experienced with Amon could have been influenced by the mating season, as the timing was simply too perfect.